Have you ever wondered why you seem to get stuck in the same loops over and over? Why, despite your best efforts to change your circumstances, nothing seems to shift in your external reality? Well, according to groundbreaking research by neuroscientist Dr. Joe Dispenza, one of the answers lies not in changing what's happening around you, but in completely rewiring what's happening inside you at the most fundamental electromagnetic level. Yes, it is very possible to change a field of energy around you that broadcasts a particular frequency of information to the universe, and it's not nearly as impossible as it might sound. Today, we're diving deep into the science of survival mode and how to change your electromagnetic frequency to a mode of conscious creation using 5 methods that Dr. Joe Dispenza has uncovered that will literally change your electromagnetic field and transform your reality from the inside out. Most people are completely unaware they're living their entire lives trapped in what neuroscience calls survival mode. They wake up feeling stressed about the day ahead, replay the same worries from yesterday, and unconsciously create the same emotional patterns that have been running their lives for years, but they're unaware of it all. It is also known as the identity or the person's known self, a personality built of habitual patterns, beliefs, and limitations. But here's what's fascinating. According to Dr. Joe Dispenza's research, when you're stuck in survival mode, you're not just mentally trapped, you are electromagnetically broadcasting the same frequency to the quantum field every single day, every single second, which means you keep calling the same experiences back to yourself. The concept of survival mode isn't just some abstract psychological theory. It's a measurable biological state that can be detected through brain scans, heart rate variability measurements, and electromagnetic field analysis. When Dr. Joe's team studies people in his workshops using advanced monitoring equipment, they can literally see the moment someone shifts out of survival mode and into what he calls elevated emotional states of creation, and the electromagnetic changes are immediate and profound. But before we explore the 5 transformations that can free you from this invisible yet almost palpable mental prison, let me explain exactly what survival mode is and why it's a factor keeping you stuck in a cyclical loop. Survival mode is an ancient biological program rooted deep in the limbic brain under total control of the autonomous nervous system, designed to keep you alive when facing immediate physical threats in your environment. When your ancestors encountered a predator, their nervous system would instantly narrow the brain's focus onto the immediate threat and flood their body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, heightening their senses and preparing them for fight, flight, or hide responses. The system worked perfectly for short-term physical dangers, but here's the problem. Our modern brains can't distinguish an actual physical threat and an imaginary worry about tomorrow's presentation. According to Dr. Joe's research, published in his studies on neuroplasticity and consciousness, when you live in survival mode for extended periods of time, your brain literally rewires itself to expect and prepare for danger, even when no danger exists. The neural pathways associated with fear, anxiety, and survival become so well traveled that they become your brain's default superhighway. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, gets filtered through the survival lens, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of stress and limitation. A popular term used in neuroscience is neurons that fire together wire together. But here's where it gets really interesting from an electromagnetic perspective. Dr. Joe's research shows that every thought you think creates an electrical charge in your brain, and every emotion you feel generates a magnetic field around your body with a specific frequency. And what is frequency? It's information. When these two forces combine, they create what physicists call an electromagnetic field. This field extends beyond your physical body, and according to quantum physics principles, it influences the probability of what you'll experience in your physical reality. When you're in survival mode, your thoughts are predominantly focused on problems, dangers, and what could go wrong. These fear-based thoughts, combined with the emotions of stress, anxiety, and frustration, create a very specific electromagnetic signature. You are literally broadcasting to the field of infinite possibilities that you expect more problems, more stress, and more reasons to worry. The quantum field responds by delivering exactly what you're electromagnetically requesting. This is why positive thinking alone does not work. You can repeat affirmations all day long, but if your emotional state is still generating the electromagnetic frequency of lack, fear, or limitation, you're sending mixed signals. The emotional component of your electromagnetic field is much more powerful than the mental component, which explains why people can think positively while still feeling negative and wonder why their lives don't improve. Now let's explore the 5 internal transformations that Dr. Joe says you must achieve to shift out of survival mode and begin broadcasting a completely new electromagnetic signature to the quantum field around you. Each of these represents a fundamental rewiring of your internal operating system, and when implemented together, they create a new personality that Dr. Joe says attracts a new personal reality. The first transformation is learning to regulate your emotional state independently of external circumstances. More people than not are emotional prisoners of their environment. In other words, they are victims to their environment. Something good happens to them, they feel positive. Something bad happens to them, they feel negative due to that external event in their environment. This reactive pattern keeps you trapped in survival mode because you're constantly at the mercy of external conditions that determine your internal state. Dr. Joe's research on emotional regulation shows that during proper meditation, we are capable of generating elevated emotional states like gratitude, joy, and appreciation completely independently of what's happening in our external world. In doing so, using heart rate variability monitoring, his team discovered that when people learn to self-generate these elevated emotions, heart rhythm patterns become coherent, creating a measurable shift in the electromagnetic field generated. The science behind this is profound. When you're in survival mode, your heart rhythm is chaotic and incoherent, reflecting the stress and anxiety in your nervous system. But when you consciously choose to feel elevated emotions regardless of circumstances, your heart begins to beat in coherent rhythmic patterns. This coherent heart rhythm sends organizing signals to your brain, optimizing cognitive function and creating what Dr. Joe calls heart-brain coherence. But here's the key. This isn't about forcing yourself to feel happy when you're sad or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about developing the skill to access genuine elevated emotional states through specific practices like heart-focused breathing, conscious awareness of the physical heart, and focused meditation aimed at a specific purpose. These techniques signal to your nervous system that the environment is safe and that it's okay to leave survival mode even when external circumstances haven't changed yet. Because let's face it, as stressful as life can be, most of the worries we have nowadays won't physically harm you. They are not a physical threat. The electromagnetic implications of emotional self-regulation are staggering. When you can consistently generate elevated emotions, you begin broadcasting a frequency of wholeness, abundance, and possibility rather than lack, limitation, and fear. This shift in your electromagnetic signature literally changes what you call into your life because you're no longer dependent on your environment to feel elevated. You become a creative force rather than a victim of circumstances. So with all that said, if you are able to become aware of your emotional states of being throughout your entire day, you are then leaving the program that's keeping you in survival mode and now becoming the observer of that program. You have effectively stepped outside of it as a known program. The key here is to remember to do this throughout the entire day, and don't forget. When you are able to continually become aware of and stay aware of the negative emotional states and limiting thoughts you want to change, you begin to wire the brain in a direction you wish to see, a state of creation rather than survival. The more you change internally, the more change you see externally. The quantum field responds to who you're being, what frequencies you're giving off, and it must find balance somewhere. Try to remember to catch those negative emotions and limiting thoughts, and watch how challenging it truly is. The second transformation involves breaking free from the addiction to familiar emotions, even when those emotions are limiting or painful. This might sound strange, but Dr. Joe's research reveals that most people are biochemically addicted to their own emotional patterns, whether those emotions are positive or negative. Another way to say that is most people are creatures of habit and routine, whether or not those routines are hurting them or helping them. Every emotion you feel triggers a release of specific neuropeptides and hormones throughout your body. When you've been feeling the same emotions for years, your cells develop receptor sites that expect and crave these familiar chemical cocktails. Anxiety, depression, anger, and frustration might feel terrible, but if they're familiar, your body will unconsciously create situations that justify feeling these emotions because that's what feels biochemically normal. In other words, you're addicted to those emotions, and the body craves them so much it will send constant reminders so it can get its fix. That's the little voice in your head saying, do it. Be pissed off at that person that just cut you off when you're in traffic. And just like that, your same old predictable reaction then follows. Dr. Joe's studies using brain imaging technology show that people stuck in survival mode chronically have developed neural networks that automatically fire together, creating predictable patterns of thinking, feeling, and ultimately action. He calls this living in the past because you're using yesterday's emotions to think about tomorrow's possibilities. If you're chemically addicted to limitation, you cannot imagine or create anything beyond what you've already experienced, and you therefore create this same predictable future over and over, day in and day out. Breaking this addiction requires what Dr. Joe terms crossing the river of change. Instead of remaining stuck in autopilot when you feel triggered by anxiety, anger, or sadness, you must become the observer of these emotions without unconsciously acting on them. This conscious observation begins to break the autopilot programs that keep you trapped in familiar feeling states. The electromagnetic significance of breaking emotional addictions cannot be overstated. Each emotion carries its own frequency signature, and when you're addicted to lower vibrational emotions like fear, resentment, or victimization, you're constantly broadcasting these frequencies into the quantum field. By consciously choosing to feel unfamiliar elevated emotions, even when your body is craving familiar stress chemicals, you begin to change your electromagnetic transmission, and these changes can be seen immediately in Kirlian photography, which Joe has used to measure such changes. Be prepared, because this process requires incredible energy and self-awareness due to the body being in an uncomfortable and unknown zone. By definition, you are outside of your comfort zone, but as we all know, this is where true growth occurs. The reason you feel safer and more comfortable when feeling familiar emotions, even if they're negative, is because they're known quantities the brain can use to predict a probable outcome. This is one way the brain creates a best case scenario chance for survival, as it predicts worst case scenario outcomes under knowns it is mapped into its neural network. But as you practice observing your emotional reactions without immediately acting on them, you develop executive function, the ability to consciously choose your response rather than automatically reacting from old programs. As you continually respond in new ways, thus creating new programs, old cells naturally being recycled are replaced by new cells with differing receptor sites. The body truly does follow the mind. The third transformation centers on changing your relationship with time and learning to live in the present moment rather than unconsciously rehearsing future problems or reliving past traumas over and over in the mind. Survival mode keeps you mentally scattered across time, constantly worried about what might happen or stuck replaying past negative events that have already occurred. It turns out that 50% of what we think happened to us in the past isn't even what actually happened. So by that, you are flooding your brain and body with negative chemicals for zero reason at all. According to Dr. Joe's research on consciousness and brain function, when your attention is fragmented across past and future, you're literally giving away your power to create in the present moment. The present moment is where all creation occurs. It's the only place where you can access the quantum field of infinite possibilities and consciously influence your electromagnetic signature. Dr. Joe calls this the generous present moment, and this is best accessed through meditation. Now, I am not affiliated with Dr. Joe in any way, but I am a huge fan of his work. So if you're interested in his meditations and more, you can find them at drjoedispenza.com. Living in survival mode means your brain is constantly scanning for potential threats, which keeps you focused on worst-case scenarios and past evidence of why things might go wrong. This temporal fragmentation generates high beta brainwaves and creates what Dr. Joe calls an incoherent brain state, where different neural networks are firing chaotically rather than working together harmoniously. But when you train your attention to remain present through practices like focused meditation, breath work, and mindfulness, your brain begins to integrate and become coherent. Brain imaging studies from Dr. Joe's workshops show that advanced meditators can maintain present moment awareness for extended periods, and during these states, their electromagnetic field becomes measurably more coherent and organized. The shocking thing about this is the short amount of time it takes for those using meditation to reorganize this field when compared to traditional methods like fasting, quality nutrition, and more sleep. What can happen in one meditation takes the traditional approach weeks to achieve. The electromagnetic implications of present moment awareness are revolutionary. When your attention is scattered across time, you're broadcasting mixed and conflicting signals to the quantum field. You might be visualizing your desired future while simultaneously worrying about past failures, creating electromagnetic static that prevents clear manifestation. But when you can maintain sustained present moment awareness, you become a clear and focused transmitter capable of broadcasting coherent intentions into the field of possibilities. Present moment awareness also activates the prefrontal cortex, the most evolved part of your brain responsible for creativity, decision-making, and conscious intention. When this area is activated, you gain access to solutions and possibilities that are completely invisible when you're operating from survival mode consciousness. The key takeaway here is that practicing awareness of the present moment better helps you develop your ability to pay attention and break free of those limiting autopilot programs. It is challenging but life-changing. The fourth transformation involves developing a clear intention of your desired future and cultivating elevated emotions associated with that clear intention. Most people create their future unconsciously by default, using past experiences as templates for what's possible. If you've experienced struggle in relationships, you unconsciously expect future relationships to be difficult. If you've had financial challenges, you automatically assume money will always be scarce. Your new future should be a model of how the personality that is the future you would be. Those are only old programs, so change the program. Dr. Joe's research on holding a clear intention with elevated emotions and practicing mental rehearsal for that future shows that the brain cannot distinguish between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. When you repeatedly rehearse mentally and emotionally experience your desired future, your brain begins to create neural networks as if the future has already happened. This process literally rewires your brain to expect and recognize opportunities aligned with your vision rather than evidence supporting your past limitations. This even shows epigenetic changes. But here's the critical component that most people miss. Mental rehearsal without elevated emotion is just fantasy. You must combine a clear intention using mental rehearsal of your desired future with the elevated emotions you would feel if that future were already your reality. This combination of clear intention and elevated emotion creates a new electromagnetic signature that begins attracting experiences that match your vision of the future rather than your past. This is best done through regular meditation, aka mental rehearsal. The science behind this is based on neuroplasticity research showing that the brain can literally rewire itself using this model. Another way of saying this is when you repeatedly imagine your desired future while feeling the emotions of already having achieved it, you're installing new neural hardware that supports this new reality rather than maintaining the old programs that created your current circumstances. The electromagnetic aspect of mental rehearsal in this fashion is perhaps the most profound of all the transformations. When you can consistently hold a clear intention that represents your desired future while feeling the elevated emotions associated with that reality, you begin broadcasting a completely new frequency pattern in your electromagnetic field. Instead of electromagnetically requesting more of what you've already experienced, you're transmitting the signature of what you aim to create. This shift in electromagnetic transmission begins to influence the quantum field in your favor. Get ready to begin noticing synchronicities, opportunities, and resources that were previously invisible. And it's not that these possibilities didn't exist before, but rather your old electromagnetic signature just wasn't tuned to transduce the information in the same way. What's happening is you're changing your internal frequency, and it is the same as tuning into different channels of possibility, and in this you find the answer you've been seeking in the unknown rather than the knowns of the past. The key is to sustain these internal changes as long as possible to see it through. The fifth and final way to change your electromagnetic frequency involves cultivating genuine gratitude for your future before it manifests in your physical reality. This might seem impossible or even illogical, but Dr. Joe's research shows that gratitude is one of the most powerful emotions for creating an electromagnetic frequency for desired change. Most people only feel grateful after something positive happens to them, which is perfectly fine and normal, but this would be another example of an external event causing an internal change in you, and again, being at effect instead of cause. What would happen if you could reverse this process and feel genuinely grateful for your desired reality before it shows up in your physical world? Dr. Joe's studies on gratitude and heart coherence reveal that when people practice meditations involving gratitude, their heart rhythm patterns become coherent and organized when done properly. This coherent heart state sends organizing signals throughout the entire body, optimizing immune function, improving cognitive performance, and creating measurable improvements in the electromagnetic field coherence. But feeling grateful for a future that hasn't happened yet requires a sophisticated understanding of quantum mechanics and consciousness. In the quantum field, all possibilities exist simultaneously as pure potential. When you feel genuine gratitude for your desired future, you're acknowledging its existence in the realm of possibility and inviting it to synchronize into your physical reality. And for a better chance of this happening, you must constantly remember your future even more so than your past. The electromagnetic signature of gratitude is uniquely powerful because it combines the magnetic field of an elevated emotion as if you've already received something with the electrical charge of appreciation and acknowledgement. When you can authentically feel grateful for what you're creating before it manifests, you're broadcasting a frequency that says, "Thank you to the quantum field for this gift that I know is already mine." This advanced form of gratitude practice requires letting go of the need to control how or when your desired reality will appear. Instead of trying to force outcomes through willpower, you're expressing trust in the infinite intelligence of the quantum field to organize circumstances in ways that exceed your limited imagination. In other words, this understanding means you don't need to force and control every little thing. You can instead place that trust into a higher intelligence and give it a template to organize for you, and in a way that you would never have guessed. The integration of all 5 methods to transformation creates what Dr. Joe calls a new personality, and according to his research, your personality creates your personal reality. When you can regulate your emotions independently of circumstances, break free from addictive emotional states, maintain present moment awareness, hold an elevated vision for your future, and feel grateful for what's coming before it arrives, you become an entirely different person. A new electromagnetic signature begins attracting experiences that match your elevated internal state rather than your old survival mode patterns that limit possibilities. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become a conscious creator of your reality. As you practice these methods and become better, your external world will begin to reorganize itself around your new internal configuration because you're no longer broadcasting the frequency of problems, limitations, and survival. Here's what makes this work so powerful. It's not just theoretical philosophy, it's measurable science. Dr. Joe's workshops use advanced monitoring equipment to track participants' brainwaves, heart rate variability, and electromagnetic field changes in real time. They can literally see the moment someone shifts out of survival mode and into elevated states of creation, and the transformations are immediate and profound. Participants report spontaneous healings, improved relationships, unexpected financial opportunities, and synchronicities that seem to defy logical explanation. But from a quantum physics perspective, these results make perfect sense. When you change your electromagnetic signature, you change what you're magnetically attracting into your life. The key insight that ties everything together is understanding that you are both the observer and the observed in your reality. You're not separate from the quantum field. You're an extension of it through consciousness, which permeates through everything. Every thought you think and every emotion you feel is literally sculpting the field of possibilities around you. When you remain unconscious of this process, you create your future unconsciously based on past programming and survival mode conditioning. This isn't always the case because some people are just wired to create unconsciously from elevated states, but most people are stressed and stuck about 70% of the time in survival states of being. But when you become conscious of your role as an electromagnetic being capable of influencing quantum possibilities, you gain access to creative powers that most people never realize they possess. You are empowered to stop being at the effect of your life and become the conscious cause of your experiences. The research is clear. Survival mode is not just a mental state, it's a measurable electromagnetic condition that keeps you trapped in repetitive patterns and limited possibilities. But through conscious practice of these 5 internal transformations, you can literally rewire your brain, reprogram your emotional patterns, and shift your electromagnetic signature to align with the reality that you want to create rather than the one you want to escape. The most beautiful part of this process is that as you transform internally, the external world has no choice but to respond because you're operating from a completely different level of consciousness and electromagnetic coherence, which requires balance from the quantum field you're a part of. You become living proof that reality is far more malleable and responsive than most people ever dare to imagine, and your life becomes a masterpiece of conscious creation rather than unconscious reaction. So what are you waiting for? Be the change you want to see. If you made it this far in the video, I want to say thank you so much, and please like and subscribe this if you want to see more of this kind of stuff. I'm just